Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Whew, yeah. I took that, it's a 2-stage with the vaccine thing. And I got the first shot of Moderna about a month ago. And then you go back for the second part after about 4 weeks. And you get the second shot. And that second shot, oh my goodness, knocks you on your butt, Wow. Oh man. So this is the 3rd day after getting a second shot in the series. And feeling a little better. And my whole body was like ice. I could not get warm. I mean, I had like 4 blankets. And it was just, I couldn't get warm. And I got the heating pad, and that helped a little bit, getting a heating pad, but just the whole body like ice. And the whole body aching, headache, dry mouth is dry. There's a lot of reactions. Everybody's different, but I got a lot of reactions. I got some hives. Hare Krishna. Hello, Sushil. I was just saying how I'm just recuperating from the second in the series of vaccine shots. And people have their different views, about this. Some people say, there isn't any virus at all. It's all a government plot. Okay, whatever. Hare Krishna. That view is a little too extreme for me. People are getting sick. There was one man, he made a video how he didn't think there was any virus at all. That they were making this up because he wrote to the CDC, he wanted a sample of the COVID-19 virus so that he could test it and see what it was, and they didn't send it to him. So he says that there isn't any virus. They wouldn't send me. Oh, come on. I mean, people that believe that. I mean, why would the CDC send a lunatic this virus? I mean, who knows what crazy person he is, maybe he would infect everybody with it. Maybe he's a terrorist. They're going to send a sample of this dangerous virus to somebody? What is he, nuts? So he was saying, well, there isn't any. That's why they didn't send it. What an idiot. Sorry. He's presenting himself as some sort of authority. So it's like a broad spectrum, extremes on one end and extremes on the other. And then the other argument is, people take this. Okay, what is Mr. Sushil says something here. I had my first dose, but condition is very grim in New Delhi. I'm sorry to hear that. That really breaks my heart. Why India is getting hit so hard. India gets hit really hard with everything. Droughts, and now this virus thing. It feels so bad. Yeah, I'm so sorry for people suffering from this over there. Actually, Prabhupada, he kind of explained it a little bit, why India gets really hit hard with things, is because it is the land of Krishna. And some devotees were asking, why is it in the West they have so much material facility and life seems so much easier? And he explained, they're just reaping the results of some good karma. There's some karma there, good karma. They're reaping the results of it. It doesn't last, but if there's some good karma, then they're reaping the results. And then why is India suffering so much with different things? And Prabhupada said, because Indians are really, it's the land of Krishna. And they're meant to take up this Krishna consciousness and to lead the world. And instead, they're kind of getting influenced by wanting so many material things. So they get hit really hard. It's one of the reasons, is because the Indians are really meant for serving Krishna. It's just in the culture. Krishna appeared there. So, but I feel real bad, when I hear about it. I hope everyone is able to do whatever it is they're able to do to deal with the situation. But so these arguments are raised in the West, especially. And then another argument they use is, I've heard it is, I'm not afraid to die. I'm like, that's a little too extreme for me too. I'm not going to take any vaccine, but it's really not that. Like, the way I'm looking at it is, if enough people do get vaccinated, then it stops the spread of disease. It stops it. It's not that, I'm so afraid of the disease that I have to have it's not that at all. It's that because it can stop the spread of it. It's called herd immunity. If enough people are vaccinated, then where's it going to go? It can't go, and there's no place for it to go, and that's it, So it's more like that. And when they say, "Oh, I'm not afraid of the virus," but they are afraid. It's just they're afraid of the vaccine, so they are afraid. I'm not really afraid. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I see that it could benefit everyone if this thing that's floating around, it can't, it doesn't have anywhere to go. So I think those people are a little selfish that see like that, because there are a lot of people that are very vulnerable and their health isn't good. And if they contract this thing, they die. And so it's really kind of selfish, I think, for people to simply see in terms of me. I'm not afraid. I'm not going to take it. They're not thinking of anybody else. They're just kind of stuck, So, whatever. I went ahead and bit the bullet. I got the thing, and I'm recuperating from the reactions. So, there's that. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I feel a little better today. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And also devotees of Krishna and followers of Srila Prabhupada, his disciples and followers. I've seen some quotes where Prabhupada says that these vaccines and this Western medicine is no good because they're just experimenting on people. They don't really know what it does. And they're just experimenting on everyone. So that's been presented to me also, that I'm not following Srila Prabhupada if I get this vaccine. But there's different ways to understand that too. And a lot of times Prabhupada's instructions they're tied to time, place, and circumstance. And the devotees, because they have a certain viewpoint, will pull it out of context, and instead of looking at it in a broader context, they'll just take it out of context to prove their point. So I've seen that also. And what I see with that is that in an emergency, and this is certainly an emergency, many devotees have died as well as others. Many of the disciples have passed away because of this. It's an emergency. So in an emergency, sometimes you do things, whatever works, if it's an emergency. And this is an emergency. Just to get vaccine for this and a vaccine for that, and that's kind of like, it's too much, But in an emergency, you do the needful because it's an emergency. So I'm also seeing that this devotee that was so fixed on what Prabhupada said about the vaccines, went ahead and made a chocolate cake because it would please some family members, and they wanted to kind of make the family members happy. But Prabhupada said not to do chocolate. So it's kind of like you pick and choose the instructions that you want to follow. But instructions that are tied to time, place, and circumstance, they're tied to time, place, and circumstance, and they're a little flexible. So, Hare Krishna. At least that's how I see it. And Prabhupada also, he apologized because he said that as he was leaving, he was very sick and he was leaving, he said, I've accepted too many unqualified disciples. They're not qualified. But then he said, but what could I do? It was an emergency. So there's always that factor in an emergency. And we see it. Rules a lot of times get broken in an emergency, like in the Battle of Kṛṣṇa. Maharaj Yudhishthira was famous for never telling a lie. He was so honest. He never told a lie. He never cheated. He was famous for that. And because of that, his chariot never really even touched the ground. It was always floating just above the ground. He was so honest. But in order to defeat, oh dear, I can't remember exactly who it was. It was one of the other soldiers, one of the well-known soldiers that couldn't be defeated on the other side. Who was the father of Aswatthama? Was that, who was Aswatthama's father? I can't remember his name, but it was Aswatthama's father, one of the great acharyas, was on the other side fighting. And so they didn't know what to do. So Krishna, he told Yudhishthira to tell him that Aswatthama had been slain. Now there was an elephant also named Aswatthama. So the way Maharaj Yudhishthira did it was, he said, Aswatthama, the elephant, has been slain. So it was kind of a lie, but not a lie. But that's what the Acharya heard, that Aswatthama, he didn't hear the elephant part. And his spirit was broken and they were able to defeat him. So in an emergency, sometimes these things are used. So I see the vaccine in that light because it's an emergency. And also there was another time, Prabhupada was, I forget where it was exactly, somewhere in India, had accepted a dinner invitation to have dinner at the home of some Indian family. And the disciples noticed, they traveled with Prabhupada, that there was onions in the sabji. So one of the disciples, Prabhupada, there's onions in the sabji. Onions. Prabhupada, he said, that's all right. We'll just accept it. They don't know. They don't know that we don't use onions. So if we say something and we don't accept it, they'll be offended because they cooked this for us. They want us to be pleased. This is their standard. And they don't know not to use onions. So just eat it. So then one of the devotees recently, when I recounted that little incident, explained to me that, yes, Prabhupada accepted the onions, but then the people afterwards were instructed nicely that if they're going to cook again, it's better not to use onions. Prabhupada doesn't like onions. But he accepted it because they want to have them engage in devotional service. So there's different reasons why sometimes these strict rules are kind of flexible. So I see the vaccine in that way. It's an emergency. So, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. I'm doing my part to try and stop it. Not that I'm afraid of the disease. Who cares? But in that way, if I can help to slow this thing down and get it gone, then I might as well go ahead and do it. And then also, to be myself immune, which is nice. I don't mind. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare. But it's not out of fear. I'm not doing it out of fear. It's not that. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So I was considering this morning how when there is like these times of feeling emptiness, feeling empty, feeling like we don't like that. We don't want to feel empty. We don't want to feel nothing. Those are good times to chant Hare Krishna, feeling like that. Those are good times to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. We're not being pulled this way and pulled that way, do this, go over here, engaging in so much busy work when we're kind of like just existing. I'm very fortunate to have those times and not be desperate to fill them up with something, because then Krishna can fill the emptiness up. Krishna can fill it. You don't have to run over here and do that, run over there and do this. It's better not to. And then Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, just Krishna, Hare Krishna, Radha Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, then that sound vibration, because they're non-different, become filled. It's like start to reverberate Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It's like you think about, like, say, a guitar. It's a Western instrument, it's long and it's got strings on it, and the body of it is hollow. And when the strings are played, then it kind of reverberates in the body of the instrument. Sitar's like that. Any stringed instrument, really, it reverberates, but it's hollow. If it wasn't hollow, it wouldn't reverberate. So as one devotee who hasn't talked about it recently, but a few years ago they were very much absorbed in talking about that hollowness, that emptiness, and letting Krishna fill it. Hare Krishna. So it's interesting that you say heartstrings. Let Krishna play the heartstrings and let the heart be clean, and you can say empty, except for Krishna, and let the heartstrings play and reverberate Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. It's just the way I was thinking about things this morning. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So let's see what's going on here with Krishna. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada. 10th Canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna Chaitanya, Krishna Chaitanya, Krishna Chaitanya. So this is summary study by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And Krishna, it's called, chapter 47, it's called Kṛṣṇa Pleases His Devotees. And Krishna has just visited the house of Kubja, a high-class prostitute in Mathura. And the lesson there is that anyone can serve Krishna. She received Krishna in the way she was accustomed to receiving people. And Krishna became a pure devotee. So, now Krishna and Balaram, or it was Krishna and Kṛṣṇa who visited Kubja. Okay. Yes, Kubja represents the Purusha Shakti potency of Krishna. Purusha Shakti, that's Krishna expanded into the material world. As just like Radharani represents his Chit Shakti potency. Krishna. So Krishna didn't stay very long with her. Yeah. Because the connection with the material world is temporary. So Krishna visits the material world occasionally, like he visited Kubja, whereas his connection with the spiritual world is eternal. Krishna is always present either in Vaikuntha planets or in the Goloka Vrindavan planet. The technical term for his presence in the spiritual world is Prakata Lila. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Anyone who desires a relationship of perverted sense gratification with Krishna must be considered to be less intelligent. His mentality requires to be reformed. So that was Kubja. Now Krishna is going to visit Kṛṣṇa, his uncle. Evidently, Kṛṣṇa is the brother of either his mother or father, I'm not sure which, but he's his uncle. After a while, Krishna fulfilled his promise to visit Kṛṣṇa at his house. Kṛṣṇa was in a relationship with Krishna as his servitor, and Krishna wanted to get some service from him. He went there, accompanied by both Lord Balaram and Uddhava. When Krishna, Balaram, and Uddhava were approaching the house of Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa came forward, embraced Uddhava, and offered respectful obeisances, bowing down before Lord Krishna and Balaram. Embraced Uddhava and offered respectful obeisances, bowing down before Lord Krishna and Balaram. So these are all family members. Uddhava is Krishna's cousin. Kṛṣṇa is Krishna's uncle, Krishna and Balaram. So they're all family members. Krishna, Balaram, and Uddhava offered him obeisances in turn and were offered appropriate sitting places by Kṛṣṇa. When all were comfortably seated, Kṛṣṇa washed their feet and sprinkled the water on his head. I wonder who Kṛṣṇa is in Chaitanya Lila, because everybody came to join Chaitanya Lila. And I wonder who Uddhava is. There's a scripture written by one of Shivananda Sen's son, Guru Gananesh Dipika, that explains who's who. So it'd be nice to know who Uddhava is in Chaitanya Lila. Krishna, Balaram, and Uddhava offered him obeisances in turn and were offered appropriate sitting places by Kṛṣṇa. When all were comfortably seated, Kṛṣṇa washed their feet and sprinkled the water on his head. Then he offered nice flowers, sandalwood pulp, in regular worship. All three of them became very satisfied by the behavior of Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa then bowed down before Krishna, putting his head on the ground. Then, keeping Krishna's lotus feet on his lap, Kṛṣṇa began to gently massage them. When Kṛṣṇa was fully satisfied in the presence of Krishna and Balaram, His eyes became filled with tears of love for Krishna, and he began to offer his prayers as follows. My dear Lord Krishna, it's very kind of you to have killed Kamsa and his associates. You have delivered the whole family of the Yadu dynasty from the greatest calamity. Your saving of the great Yadu dynasty will always be remembered by them. My dear Lord Krishna and Balaram, you are the original personality from whom everything has emanated. You are the original cause of all causes. You have inconceivable energy and you are all pervasive. But for yourself, there is no other cause and effect, gross or subtle. You are the Supreme Brahman, realized by the study of the Vedas. By your inconceivable energy, you are actually visible before us. You create this cosmic manifestation by your own potencies, and you enter into it yourself. As the 5 material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and sky, are distributed in everything, manifested by different kinds of bodies, so you alone enter into different varieties of bodies created by your own energy. You enter the body as the individual soul, as well as independently as the supersoul. The material body is created by your inferior energy. The living entities, individual souls, are part and parcel of you, and the supersoul is your localized representation. This material body, the living entity, and the supersoul constitute an individual living being, but originally they are all different energies of the one Supreme Lord. So that's how Krishna is the source of everything. He expands differently as his personal representation, as his external energy, and as the Jiva soul combines them, and you get a living entity. But they all come from Krishna. In the material world, you are creating, maintaining, and dissolving the whole manifestation by your interaction of 3 qualities, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. You are not implicated by the activities of those material qualities because your supreme knowledge is never overcome, as is the case with the individual living entity. So Krishna is never comes under the influence of the 3 modes of material nature because he's manifesting them. He doesn't come under their influence, whereas the individual soul does, like us, individual living being. We're so small we become overwhelmed. As the Supreme, and this is Prabhupada speaking now, as the Supreme Lord enters, that was Akrura, and now Prabhupada speaking, as the Supreme Lord enters into this material creation, and thus the creation, maintenance, and destruction are going on in their due course. So the part and parcel living entity enters the material elements and has his material body created for him. So the Supreme Lord enters the material creation, and the living entity enters the material creation, and a body is created for him. The difference between the living entity and the Lord is that the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and has the tendency to be overcome by the interaction of material qualities. Krishna, the Param Brahman, or the Supreme Brahman, being always situated in full knowledge, is never overcome by such activities. Therefore, Krishna's name is Achyuta, meaning he who never falls down. Krishna's knowledge of spiritual identity is never overcome by material action, whereas the identity of the minute part and parcel living entity is prone to be overcome by material action. The individual living entities are eternally part and parcel of God. As minute sparks of the original fire, Krishna, they have the tendency to become extinguished. So, Uddhava, when he visited the gopis, he shared this knowledge with them. And then But it's interesting that here, when Krishna visited Kubja, this kind of discourse did not take place. Kubja, very simply, engaged her senses in Krishna. And Prabhupada warns against people trying to do that because she's actually the Purusha Shakti potency of Krishna. So she can't be imitated. And she's said to be almost like the gopis. Almost, but not exactly. She's almost like the gopis. Very close, but not exactly. But this kind of discourse didn't take place. Uddhava spoke it to the gopis to help them in their mood of separation. And now Akrura is expressing this knowledge. But it's interesting that Kubja didn't. She just engaged very simply in worship of Krishna, basically with her senses. As the Supreme Lord enters into this material creation, okay, we read that, it's Prabhupada. Akrura continued. He was satisfied with worshipping the lotus feet of Krishna. He says, Akrura, the less intelligent class of men misunderstand your transcendental form to be also made of material energy. That concept is not at all applicable to you. Actually, you are all spiritual, and there's no difference between you and your body. Because of this, there is no question of your being conditioned or liberated. You are ever liberated in any condition of life. See, the Prabhupada's so poetic here. His translation, this is originally in the Sanskrit, and the way Prabhupada translates very poetically. He says, because there's no question of your being conditioned or liberated, you are ever liberated in any condition of life. As stated in the Bhagavad-Gita, only the fools and rascals consider you to be an ordinary man. To consider your lordship to be one of us, conditioned by the material nature, is a mistake due to our imperfect knowledge. When people deviate from the original knowledge of the Vedas, they try to identify the ordinary living entities with your lordship. Your lordship has appeared on this earth in your original form in order to reestablish the real knowledge that the living entities are neither one with nor equal to the Supreme Lord. My dear Lord, you are always situated in uncontaminated goodness, Suddha Sattva. Your appearance is necessary to reestablish actual Vedic knowledge, as opposed to atheistic philosophy, which tries to establish that God and living entities are one and the same. My dear Lord Krishna, this time you have appeared in the home of Vasudeva as his son, along with your plenary expansion, Sri Balaram. Your mission is to kill all the atheistic royal families, along with their huge military strength. You have invented yourself to minimize the overburden of the world, and in order to fulfill this mission, you have glorified the dynasty of Yadu, appearing in the family as one of its members. That's usually the mission of the Lord, is to reestablish the path, the progressive path back to Godhead, and to annihilate the demonic forces. Akrura continues, my dear Lord, today my home has become purified by your presence. I have become the most fortunate person in the world. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is worshipable by all living kinds of demigods, pitris, living entities, kings, and emperors, and who is the super soul of everything, has come into my home. The water of his lotus feet is purifying the three worlds, and now he has kindly come to my place. Who is there in the three worlds among factually learned men who will not take shelter of your lotus feet and surrender unto you? Who, knowing well that no one can be as affectionate as you are to your devotees, is so foolish that he will decline to become your devotee? Throughout the Vedic literature, it is declared that you are the dearmost friend of every living entity. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, completely capable of fulfilling the desires of your devotees. See, there again, the Bhagavad-Gita is quoted before it's spoken to Arjuna. Because Krishna explains, he originally spoke Bhagavad-Gita to the sun god Vivaswan, the beginning of creation. And that it's simply being re-spoken in the Battle of Kurukshetra because it had been lost. But here, it's not lost to Kṛṣṇa, because Kṛṣṇa is a devotee. So he has access to that Bhagavad-Gita that was spoken by the sun god Vivaswan. Or there may be other times when it was spoken, but we know it was spoken to Vivaswan. And Vivaswan spoke it to Ikshvaku, and Ikshvaku spoke it to his son Manu, and then there it goes. There's the disciplic line for the Bhagavad-Gita. Amongst the ruling class, Bhagavad-Gita was spoken amongst the royal families. Throughout the Vedic literature, it is declared you are the dearmost friend of every living entity. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, completely capable of fulfilling the desires of your devotees. You are the real friend of everyone. In spite of giving yourself to your devotees, you are never depleted of your original potency. Your potency neither decreases nor increases in volume. That's interesting. As I say, there was some discussion the other night about always expanding, always increasing. But here, Kṛṣṇa says your potency neither decreases nor increases in volume. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So many aspects of Krishna to try to discuss and understand. Krishna. Kṛṣṇa continues, my dear Lord, it is very difficult for even the great mystic yogis and demigods to ascertain your movement. You cannot be approached by them, and yet out of your causeless mercy, you have kindly consented to come to my home. This is the most auspicious moment in the journey of my material existence. By your grace only, I can just understand that my home, my wife, my children, my worldly possessions are all different bonds to material existence. Please cut the knot and save me from this entanglement of false society, friendship, and love. Lord Krishna was very pleased by Kṛṣṇa's offering of prayers. His smile, this is Prabhupada, his smile was captivating Kṛṣṇa more and more. The Lord replied him as follows. My dear Kṛṣṇa, in spite of your submissiveness, I consider you to be my superior, on the level with my father and teacher, and most well-wishing friend. You are therefore worshipable by me, and since you are my uncle, I am always to be protected by you. I desire to be maintained by you, because I am one of your own children. Apart from this filial relationship, you are always to be worshipped. Anyone who desires good fortune must offer his respectful obeisances unto personalities like you. You are more than the demigods. People go to worship the demigods when they are in need of some sense gratification. The demigods offer benediction to their devotees, after being worshipped by them. But a devotee like a Kṛṣṇa is always ready to offer the greatest benediction to the people. A saintly person or devotee is free to offer benediction to everyone, whereas the demigods can offer benediction only after being worshipped. One can take advantage of the place of pilgrimage only after going there. You see, all these, it's like business deal. If you do this, then you'll get that. If you worship the demigods and they're pleased, then they give you such and such. You put a nickel in the candy machine, you get a gumball. It's like a business deal. People go to worship the demigods when they are in need of sense gratification. The demigods offer benediction to their devotees after being worshipped by them. But a devotee like a Kṛṣṇa is always ready to offer the greatest benediction to the people, to anyone. You don't have to worship them. They're ready to give freely. They're free to do that. They don't. A devotee is free to do that. A saintly person, a devotee, is free to offer benediction to the people. A saintly person or devotee is free, whereas the demigods can offer benediction only after being worshipped. One can take advantage of the place of pilgrimage only after going there. By worshipping the particular demigod, it takes a long time for fulfillment of the desire, but saintly persons like you, my dear Kṛṣṇa, can immediately fulfill all the desires of the devotees. My dear Kṛṣṇa, you are always our friend and well-wisher. You are always ready to act for our welfare. Kindly, therefore, go to Hastinapur and see what arrangement has been made for me. See what arrangement has been made for the Pandavas. So he's giving a Kṛṣṇa some service. Go to Hastinapur and see what's going on with the Pandavas. Krishna was very anxious to know about the sons of Pandu because at a very young age they had lost their father. Being very friendly to his devotees, Krishna was anxious to know about them, and therefore he deputed a Kṛṣṇa to go to Hastinapur and get information of the real situation. Krishna continued to say, I have heard that after the death of King Pandu, his sons, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadev, along with their widowed mother, have come under the charge of Dhritarashtra, who is to look after them as their guardian. But I've also heard that this Dhritarashtra is not only blind from birth, but also blind in his affection for his cruel son. The 5 Pandavas are the sons of King Pandu, but Dhritarashtra, due to his plans and designs, is not favorably disposed toward the Pandavas. Kindly go there, study how Dhritarashtra is dealing with the Pandavas. On receipt of your report, I shall consider how to favor the Pandavas. In this way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, ordered a Kṛṣṇa to go to Hastinapur, and then he returned home, accompanied by Balaram and Uddhava. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thus ends Bhakti-Vedanta purport of the 47th chapter of Kṛṣṇa Pleases His Devotees. And then in the next chapter, we're going to hear about what's going on with Pandava and Dhritarashtra in Hastinapur. Because this is all leading up to the battle of Kurukshetra. And the ushering in of the age of Kali. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. This is the actual history. You want the history of the world? This is the actual history. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.